just address things as we are moving. When you go back, the refugee ID, yes. Legal notice number 143 added some other documents. Kindly, if possible, and it is possible, it has happened elsewhere in the world, it is not magic. Other organizations, other departments need to start taking the law when it is the law. The law is that now we can recognize the refugee ID, asylum pass, and all those other 5 documents mentioned for getting some of these services. Okay? Why this is important? Because even as citizens of this country, we are not saying we are perfect, okay? We also get challenges in obtaining, even me as a Kenyan, getting my national ID takes a very long time, right? What more of a refugee who has to go through an RSD to determine if he truly is a refugee. It takes time. Couple that with bureaucratic processes, it takes a very long time. So sometimes that refugee ID would be the thing to determine whether he qualifies or not, right? But now, maybe he has an asylum pass, he's waiting. Should he just be waiting till he gets the national ID, the refugee ID? So those are some of food for thought as we go on. I know another challenge maybe Kenya National Qualifications Authority is facing when it comes to professionals. And this is a conversation now we must have in the room, and we must bring in these people who I'm going to mention in the next stage of the conversation. Kenya National Qualifications Authority might have done its part. Luckily, the refugee has his papers. By God's grace, he fled with his papers. And they have stated that this truly is a qualified accountant. But remember, I was saying that there are, again, bodies where these professionals then again have to report to for them to practice. Getting these people now to then accept, okay? Accept that once you come from the National Qualifications Authority, then they should just admit you in their panel. Those are some of the areas which we need to now invite these professionals. The Kenya Medical Practitioners Board, maybe Law Society of Kenya, though I was preparing for Law Society that for you to practice in Kenya, you have to have learned Kenyan laws, which then in itself already is maybe self-curing for lawyers. Because let's say you are a lawyer practicing in Congo. You come to Kenya, you have been qualified by the Kenya National Qualifications Authority. Whether you are a foreigner, whether you are a refugee or not, if you are practicing elsewhere, you have to go through our Kenya Law School for you to qualify. So if this refugee would be able to go through our Kenyan Law School, then he would be able to practice as a lawyer automatically. So unaona sisi mawakili sisi tunajua vitu zetu zinaenda tu. Accountants. So ngoja kidogo sijamaliza. That's just on a light note. So msiniue. So those are some of the challenges we are working around, and then how to now bring all this together. You see, at the bottom line is we want these people to be productive to Kenya, and we want Kenya to be also beneficial to them. Cindy, that is all we are fighting for. I'm sure reasons have been given. Hakuna discretion. Hapo kwa law, hakuna discretion. Kwa law, the law. You see, I agree. I would love to see that nini. I promise you. You see, for lawyers I can speak confidently because I'm a lawyer and I know how it goes. I would love to see that rejection. You will find a valid reason. Because the law does not work at the whim of the institution. It is self-regulating. That is, while I'm saying that, let me answer some of the things Mercy raised. for instance, like, yes, I agree, the Class M permit, they will not maybe require somebody, but just as you guys are explaining, the reality on the ground is different. And trust me, the system is designed that way. To citizenship, remember I started by telling you about sovereign country. Citizenship is not something a country just gives, okay? And even in the countries maybe where security or whatever, for whatever reasons they are going through war, even in those countries, if you went and say that now today I want to be a citizen of South Sudan, I'm from Kenya, hautapewa, because that is something a country holds very dear to its heart, to call a people its own. And things like, I know these are, they just defense whatever, like morality, people coming in with different cultures, it will affect the culture of the country and all those kind of things. So there's so many factors to be looked at. So sometimes the government cannot just come outright and say, we are not going to be willing. So reasons must be created. And when these reasons are being created, they make this system very difficult so that it's not very accessible to everyone. Today we have a population of 52 million. Next month we have a population of 300 million to cater for. No. Remember I started by saying political will equals reigns. So all these things are by design. But I'm trying to say, let us, even if they are by design, let us all, that's why as humanitarian workers we are here, to find a space where we can all have these rights being enjoyed without being infringed. And the thing, it is at the whim. Remember, sometimes unapewa rejection, like Lucy was saying, you don't know, they can't quite place the reason why. You were saying yours took how long? You're still searching? Oh, yes. So those kind of so you're saying you guys have a system, eh? A refugee wants to come to Nairobi County to offer catering services. To get to wherever. She needs a license, exactly. This is a very important and part of this conversation, okay? So she comes, there's a website, now you've taken them to the website, eh? They're online, eh? But now there, in the online platform, you guys have not added refugee, the other 5 documents you were talking about. You've only put refugee ID. You have put the refugee ID. Mhm. Who is supposed to be opening this system? Mhm. The inter that thing. Unaona inter? Margaret wants to, just 1 minute. Margaret. Okay, so yes, rightly put. Mnaona shida ni ndogo sana. You can see like now for Nairobi County, they are willing, and it's true, Nairobi County is a model. And that is why when I was trying to uh, form this research, I was looking at this right to work in three dimensions. One, camp-based. Then urban refugees as a model that can inform the Shirika plan, because these people are already living out of the camps, right? What has worked for them? What has not worked for them? What has not worked, let us address it as we move to the Shirika plan so that it works better, right? So ICT, DRS na Kisumu, na Nairobi County, have coffee, please. No, let's. Mm-hmm. Okay, okay. Tulieni, tulieni. So, this is what I'm giving you just 1 minute. This is what we need. This is what the law is supposed to address, to make the playing field even. Okay, rights are not derogable. Like it doesn't. It should not apply at refugee atafanya hivi, ndi afanya hivi. No. The law works for everybody. The reason why you can walk on these streets today and reach your house is because of the law. If we didn't have law, I can just kill you outside this door and nothing will happen to me. Okay? So what we need to understand as ministries, as civil society, as whatever, is that we are fighting for a level playing field for everyone. Be a refugee, be a Kenyan. Okay? So that those rights which, for instance, let's say our laws say, for you to be a refugee in Kenya, you have to go through the status determination, right? Why would I go through all that long process, then after finishing it, more barriers? Does it make sense? Or is it fair? Okay, it might make sense politically, but is it fair? It is not. So those are the things we are trying to look at. Which laws are creating this disjointedness? And then we can have a conversation on how to find, since political will, persuade this government through nice means like litigation and other very nice languages that they understand to make that playing field even. Yes, my brother. Don't worry, the law is there. No one is going to nyanga. Nico. Yeah. Yes, just as I said, the country also has its own challenges. Mimi kama Mkenya nikianza kusema yetu, mtatuonea Roma. Lakini what I'm liking or what I'm loving is that the conversation is happening and some things are actually making progress. Susan is saying, my department is doing this department needs to do this for this to happen. So at least there's movement. That is a good thing. And those spaces, that is what we are saying, let us maximize on what is working. Remember, I started by saying, my finding is that the law iko. Right to work, iko Kenya. Sindio? Sida iko wapi? Sida iko in functional silos. Functional silos is the diagnosis. So, yeah, I'll get you Rosa and then you then tuangalie sheria inasema nini. public interest litigation. As simple, because you have the right, okay? The right is granted. I went to Nairobi County to apply for a work permit. Denied. Why were you denied? I don't know. You have the right to know, okay? If you're not given those rights, ni kwenda tu koti ndogo hapo chini, the High Court, sorry, kusema ya kwamba give these persons, that is what we are, that is fair administrative process. I applied for this, I was not given, no one has the arbitrary right to just deny you or even give you something without disclosing to you the reasons as to why, okay? But that is a whole other law class which we are not about to begin. Yes. Who is that who you had spoken? Kila mtu ameongea? Okay. So I want to give you guys a legal scenario, and then how it can cure all this. I'm going to use a term that is not very nice, but Nigerians use, cure all this nonsense. Nonsense of, oh, I took my paper to here, this department, this, blah, 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 right? They have a nice thing saying, money stops nonsense, okay? So the law here needs to stop nonsense. That is what we need to, that is our aim. That the law stops all this kusu in the middle, okay? Let me take, for instance, Section 40 of the Kenya Immigration Act, right? Which gives, recognizes, which gives the Class M permit, yeah? So, let's say today Kituo cha Sheria decided that, okay, Class M permit has existed, it is establishing the right to work, and it is wonderful. But on the ground, Class M permit is not doing what it's supposed to do to the refugees in the country. What do? We want to call for an amendment that Class M permit be scrapped off, yeah? Such that, what is then the alternative? Once somebody has been determined as a refugee, because other foreigners, you just have to prove maybe you have a visa or whatever, and then proceed, right? So once I have gone through the RSD, refugee status determination, and I've been determined as a refugee, why should I be subjected to another further test to get something which is free, okay? So the amendment will look something like this. In laws, we don't just remove everything. We insert. So we'll have a Section 40, just one second, yes, Section 40, then we'll have a Section 40A, okay? Which will state that refugee ID cards issued under Section 28 of the Refugee Act constitute sufficient work authorization. This is something, of course, this is just hypothetical. This is hypothetical for now, and a lot will go into, before the, you remember your one sentence, nimesema, amendment here. it is not going to be that easy to just insert it there within an assembly. But it is a journey, okay? It is a journey informed by so many things, and so those so many things are part of some things which we are discussing in this room. Irene?
Yes, I just wanted to weigh in on that.
Mm.
The letter on the spirit of the refugee officers, section 98, intends for the Refugee Act to be self-sufficient.
I
If
did.
you read it in tandem with the Kenya Citizenship and Immigration Act, essentially it just says that service providers of refugee identity cards should be the all-sufficient government. My submission would be, let us not, the amendment way might pose a lot of unnecessarily back and forth.
Yes.
It is just to strengthen this.
What already exists.
And we can borrow from the Rwanda's Refugee Act because that is actually it is the spirit. What the Rwanda context has done is that they have now agreed that all these other documents as asylum seeker, as we work towards getting a refugee ID, they are admissible. But once you get your refugee ID, it becomes de facto. You can transact with it, you can go to school with it, and therefore I think the strongest recommendation for the room is for it to be upheld. And I think that is what even the courts have
Yes.
mentioned
In the case, yes.
Can we just implement and agree that the refugee ID is as strong as the foreign national certificate, and refugees access services and rights? I think once we agree and we recognize that, we will stop this back and forth.
And what does recognition look like? Huh? Maybe for now, my refugee brothers and sisters. Once the law gives you a right, please take it. I know you are asking in yourselves, how? Yeah? How is the next question? If that right is violated, there are courts to go to. Okay? So once that right is given, take those rights. I know many people feel lazy or you feel like the court process is going to take long, but that is the only way. You're only here today because somebody fought war for 50 years to get you an independent country. So the war you're fighting is for your many, many grandchildren back, then the world will just be even. Yeah? Good. Umekosea kabisa. Yes, so I think those are nice discussions, already demystifying what we are going to do at the end of this workshop, which is action planning. How do we remove all these things from these papers, laws, and ensure this works? We need to chart a way forward. So that is what we'll be looking at tomorrow. With that, let us look at the research a bit. And then let's highlight some of these areas. So, another thing I wanted to mention. Remember I was saying that when you're packaging this thing to the political class, they need to get the buy-in, right? But one thing we must remember, we are humanitarians first, yeah? Why are you calling yourself humanitarian? Because you are championing for human rights. And human rights are non-derogable, like you can't take them away, Cindy. So as much as we are doing the buy-in, we should not do it so much in a way that it will only favor those who can afford. Okay? Let's have that in mind. The system needs to work for, even if it's that mama mboga who is looking for a work permit, or a doctor who is looking for his qualifications to be qualified. Okay. So have you guys had a chance to look at the research itself? The boring document that is 83 pages. is the document, how it looks. For those who will never look at it, this is your chance to look at it. So that is how it looks. This is the report. And indeed, we will input some of the reactions that are coming out of this workshop that we feel need to make its way into the report. So there's the abstract, which you already know from the briefing I gave you in the morning. You already know everything inside this report. The introduction, which is talking about, then we talked about the historical, where we started from, where we started from as Kenya in the 1990s to up to where we are. You know, one thing that is constant is change. Just because the encampment used to work in 1990, I can assure you it cannot work in 2025. And that is why we are having all these conversations, and that is why the government is bringing the Shirika plan and all those things. So yeah, like the shift from the camps to KISEDEP and GISEDEP. As Irene was saying, Rwanda is a good case study. We actually highlighted Rwanda as one of the best practices to learn. We also didn't only say best practices, also people not to copy. Unajua kwa class kuna wale chopi na wale sio wale mzazi anakwambia don't play with that kid from Nani's house. There are also those ones. Kwa jirani 255 msikopi hiyo. Yeah, their laws, their refugee laws are very restrictive. Yes, so you can see we are within the same space, but we understand. Yes, so what we try to do in our research is to use tables, because as you can appreciate, the law inapenda kuongea. Kuna mambo mengi. So if you had just put verbose, so we try to synchronize. If you don't want to read through the report, just look at the tables, you will get all the information you need. For instance, the table 1 is on the core principles of the right to work, where you will find it. So you'll find here the normative content. What is it? The acceptable quality of work. That is the principle, the international principle, okay? So protection of fundamental labor and rights work. Which international legal instrument covers it? The International Labour Organization Declaration, the African Charter on Human. Rosa, hebu sema hiyo in full. The Banjul Charter, as we shortened it, Article 15. So you already just get the instrument, the section you need, and the key operational indicators. Tumewekea tu hapo, so it's very easy to navigate the research. You can see that on equitable conditions of work, what is covered in the UHDR, ICSR, and all those things. Access to wage. We tried to highlight those rights which, or principles, which touch on the right to work, like acceptable work quality. Then looked at the instrument, and then the sections where you find it within that instrument and what it then provides. Equitable conditions of work, access to wage and earning employment, social protection, those issues of portability of SHIF and SHA and all those things when you want to live. Free choice of employment. So like right to choose your occupation. Remember what we were saying, like it is the employer too. But me as an employer, why would I want to go through all that trouble? You see, that is another challenge. That is why we are trying to say, how are you class M? It is acting more as a barrier than as a facilitator. Protection against unemployment. So any laws that are then contributing to derogating these rights are what we need to focus on and ensure that they are not doing that. And then so the human rights-based approach that I was talking about, we do this because it then forms the basis that we shouldn't look at the refugee problem as something which is there. No, first they are human beings before anything else. So we should not take away their bare minimum rights which they have as human beings, which some of these laws we then see as doing. So how did we look at it? We looked at the national instruments, our national laws. We looked at regional and international obligations, because remember we said how you domesticate them, then they become part of Kenyan law? Yes. And then we looked at comparative legal frameworks. Who is doing good, who is doing bad, who should we copy, who should we not copy? And then of course, there's another, laws sio zile tu zimefanywa na parliament. Court orders hizo pia ni part of law. So jurisprudence and secondary literature we also looked at. Hiyo ni vitabu. Anyway, sources of law, there's primary, secondary, and then comparative frameworks. So again, conceptualizing the right to work. As I was telling you, I looked at the camp situation, what happens at the camps. That's where what things about incentive work came up and why it is not working. So just because somebody has been breaking the law does not mean that that is right, okay? Remember we were saying some of the people who are participating in incentive work are very big organizations. That does not mean that is the norm. The law remains to be the law. And this is where I was saying people should take their rights when they are given to them, okay? Because you find these organizations are the ones promoting incentive work, but the law says that is not allowed. What have you done about it? Food for thought. Msiseme ati nataka kuanzisha maandamano. Mimi sianzishi maandamano. A legal maandamano, but a legal maandamano is allowed. Yeah. So we also try to look at work within the urban areas. Because for me, I believe this is where the Shirika plan, this should inform what the Shirika plan is, because this is an already existing ecosystem where refugees are working. So if they are not working within the urban employment, what are the challenges they are facing? And then how do we address these challenges? Then to make Shirika plan work, because Shirika plan will be now no camps. So what are these challenges they have been facing in the urban areas? And those are the things which you are hearing. Work permit, city council licenses, and all those things. So we need to have that cross-sectional conversation and harmonization and acceptance of this documentation across all the sectors. Skills recognition we've talked about, and it's good Kenya National Qualifications Authority is here. They were saying like the issue of professional bodies having a hard time then admitting. You might come from Kenya National Qualifications Authority with your certification saying that, yes, this is a certified accountant, but does ISPAC then take you up? We need to, the two organizations or the professional bodies and the Kenya National Qualifications Authority need to come up with a test, okay? Let's say somebody was fleeing and doesn't have his papers. And then, because the argument I was getting was that, no, how do you know that this person is truly a nurse? Yes, he was fleeing if he doesn't have his papers. That is where the test needs to come in. These professional bodies need to come together with Kenya National Qualification Authority, that they can now test this individual to assess if this person has those skills, and then thereafter, if he passes those tests, then issue him with that qualification and enroll them into their various professional bodies. The 3Ds, or the 3Ds were the work that is dirty, dangerous, and demeaning. So you find these professionals are forced to go back to do such jobs. We also talked about social security, labor market matching. Organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, I'm seeing they have a a lot going on right now around this to sensitize employers. Remember, we start by looking at the law as it is. See, the law right now requires that the employer is the one who's supposed to apply for the Class M permit for the refugee. How do we convince this employer that this is actually a good thing for you to do than just employing a Kenyan, so that this refugee can also have a place to work? I'm imagining things like the Chamber of Commerce coming in, talking to employers, trade unions coming, the body of the trade unions coming in, giving even some incentive to such employers who employ refugees, yeah? So that if you employ a refugee, if you are willing to go that small burden of applying for the work permit, then you get some small tax rebate or something like that, you know. So these are some of the practical ideas which might work, as opposed to somebody, because also sensitization needs to also continue. You find employers are maybe not taking up refugees as employees because of lack of knowledge. They're just imagining, I'll be breaking the law. They are not interested in knowing which law. They just know, your process inachukuanga long, so let me just stay away from it. So having incentives around those and using organizations like KOTU and Chamber of Commerce can be very helpful. So on the component of the right to work, we looked at, let's start with the formal employment. What description did we give it? Legal authorization to engage in wage employment. Key considerations here, we looked at the work permit requirements, the sectoral restrictions that I was talking about in the morning, and then equivalence with the nationals, and then renewal procedures. So those barriers we were talking about. All these things I already summarized in the morning. And I didn't want to start with this because mlikuwa mnaenda kuboeka sana. Same to self-employment. Challenge inatokea wapi? Business registration, tumesikia licensing pale kwa counties, property ownership. Can you imagine? Access to credit, banks. Watasema tu hapana, wewe utakimbia na imagine hata huwezi kimbia. In fact, the money is safest with refugees. Hakuna mali yanaenda. Investment requirements. Skills and qualifications, we've also talked about that. The recognition procedures that I'm talking about. Alternative assessment methods, documentation requirements, and professional licensing. Please stop requiring documents, or rather emphasizing so much on documents when it comes to refugees. Access to decent work, the areas is the standard of labor standards of enforcement, freedom from the 3D jobs that we are talking about, occupational health and safety, and then working hours regulations. So yeah, these things you can go and read for yourself, but that is how we laid them down in our research. As I was saying, most of these things, if you don't want to read everything, just go to the table. It summarizes everything for you. For those who are not lawyers, this is how the international framework looks like when it comes to the right to work. These are the laws. The year of ratification. Hii ni siku ile Kenya ilisign ama ikasema sisi tunapenda hii ama this one can work in our country. Then the provisions, we have also laid them down there for you to look at and to know which right is being upheld or violated. Regionally, tuko na hii OAU 1969 convention, which is also, the main thing it talks about is the obligation to grant asylum and protect refugees. Obligation, mnajua hiyo term obligation? Ama mtasema hiyo ni siasa ya sheria. Obligation, a must. So we then looked at the right to work under the international frameworks. This is now just explaining those things we talked about up there. On each, so each table is talking about each of those instruments, and now the specific parts of that instrument where you will be finding that that work? And of course, as you know, international instruments are not even amended. Kenyan laws you can amend. Another law class. Nitawapatia certificate after this, for those who are not lawyers. For international laws, they are amended through what we call protocols. So unapata kuna 1951 convention, and then because things are changing, we have the 1967 protocol. Ikaongeza vitu pale kwa 1951 convention. From 1967 to time has really passed, but things have been changing. And they're changing through documents like the Global Compact. Unaona? Itaenda hivyo, itakuwa protocol. And the best time to engage with anything is before it becomes a farmed up thing. Which there was an argument that, oh, hii shirika plan yenu, hata isiyo gazetted, sherekea, it is not gazetted. Because this is the time we can put everything we want our voices to go in. So that by the time we are now then pushing for it to be a law, voices zetu zimeenda. Uongoji mpaka imeshaenda imekuwa law, then unaanza kulia. So unaona vile undoing a law is hard, but undoing a policy much easier. So things like the Global Compact on Refugees, we have to pay attention as stakeholders in this field. What are they being discussed? Usione tu ni vitu tu zinasemwa huko. For instance, the shirika plans, unajua imetoka from CRRF. Yes, so, and then it has gone to what we call now our share, which has then informed the shirika plan. So all these things feed into each other. So usizionange tu ni vitu zimehang huko kwa sky. When it comes to participation, participate now that shirika plan iko kwenye transition stage. Participate fully. Sawa? Mimi kama wakili ukikuja ikishakuwa law, bill yangu itatoshana hivi. I will not do PIL again. PIL ni sahi tu. Yeah, so yeah, those are some of the international laws and how you can then relate and engage with them. And ziko mingi, unaona hiyo party yote tu ni hizo. African Union, kuna RECs, Regional Economic Blocks. Hizi pia you need to pay attention to, because kabla uende kwa jirani mwenye ako America, si uende kwa jirani mwenye ako East Africa kwanza. So we start fixing what we can inside, then we go like that. So even EAC laws, like for instance, there's this very nice section in our Refugee Act that is saying, and for me as a practitioner in this space, this is a space which I have interest in, and my advocacy, some of my advocacy is around that space. East African citizenship. Okay? It is mentioned in the Refugee Act that wewe kama refugee, you can forgo your status yenye imekuchukua 100 years to get to become a refugee in Kenya, to enjoy your rights under the East African community. Mimi naambia usijaribu kufanya kitu kama hiyo sahi. From a legal standpoint, that thing is not yet right. Because first, as a REC, as a regional economic bloc, we have not defined what is East African citizenship. There are RECs which are more advanced. Like for the EU, if I was in the EU, and they said something like that, very fast, naeza wacha, because I know I will be protected. Nikiwa na Schengen visa, hata even as a foreigner, so you can move freely from one state to another and get your rights. Hata feel that you're not home. But I know this is what maybe we are projecting towards, and it's good that we have it in law. But regionally, again, I know some of our organizations work regionally. This is something we need to look at. Farming up that East African citizenship. What does it mean for a refugee? Once I relinquish my rights as a Kenyan refugee, under whose protection am I? Yeah? So those are things which are still developing. They exist in law, but they can bring changamoto. A refugee can see that and say, basi, now I'll just be free movement protocol. Fika kwa border. Wapi refugee? Si nimewacha nimekuja kuenjoy East African citizenship. Chesa. You will have a long day. So yeah, under the Rex we looked at the EAC, there's IGAD. IGAD has quite tried on refugee matters. It has gone beyond just looking at refugees generally, and it has looked at that right to work for refugees specifically, and which is a good thing. You know, si mnajua ile Kampala Declaration ya 2019. COMESA is also a regional economic community that we looked at, and Kenya is part of those recs that I've talked about. Yeah, so then that concluded our international section. And under the Kenyan legal framework, of course, as we already discussed, I'm now just repeating myself, the constitutional framework, what it provides, okay? The Article 41 that we are talking about of every person, not every citizen. Mwanaiona sasa? Hivi ndio inakaa. Hiyo 5.11 hiyo, Fair Labor Practice. Article 41 ukienda pale unaipata imepangwa hivyo. Every person has the right to fair labor practices. Every worker. Okay? Once you are working in Kenya, you are an every worker. Wacha kujiteka. Sheria imewapatia right. Chukua. Even now right, hiyo D inasema kuna right ya kufanya nini? D. Section 2D. Maandamano. Iko kwenye constitution. Sio mimi nimesema. But usijaribu. Hapana jaribu. Equality and non-discrimination, you'll find it under Article 27. Your right to social security, Article 43. Then localizing the international law to Section 2, 5 and 6, subsections 5 and 6, which I was talking about. What we are going to add here, Rosa, is the right to Article 47, fair administrative processes. And then, other than the Constitution, we have our Refugee Act, 2021, stemming from the 2006 Act, hailed again for its very progressive additions from the 2006 one, and that is actually one of the reasons why we are here, to try and make those things work. So the various sections maybe you need to look at is the section 28 on the rights to work, unaziona hapo 4, 6, and 7, and then refugees activities must not negatively impact the host communities. Si niliwaambia mkono moja inapatiana na ingine inachukua. Rights are no, with rights comes what? Obligations, yeah? So, haukuji sasa tu, sisi ni refugees bwana tumepewa hivi. No, you are also, when your right should not be my disservice. You should not be stepping on my toes because uko na right. Okay? So that's what section 8 is talking about, that the activities of refugees must not impact the host communities negatively. But again, we were acknowledging that this is a potential limitation on the right to work. So, you know, tunapenda sana kutafuta hizo loopholes, then we maximize on them to derogate rights. So we are finding that this is a bit vague, and it can be used to apply discriminatory procedures. So the regulations, watu wenye wako kwa hii space wali attack regulation, and it's a good attack which should continue, because regulations are the teeth of the act. Okay? The act can state the nini, but the how of what that law is meant to do will be found in the regulations. So justifiably, let us look at the regulations and ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to do. Designated areas and restrictions on economic mobility, of course, what Shirika Plan is trying to cure. And let us have in mind and know that just the same way we've taken 30 years from encampment to where to starting having this conversation. Of course, we are not praying or saying that Shirika plan to take another 30 years, because now things have changed, but it is a progressive implementation. And as I said, this is the right time to have everyone's voices go in that. So nisiwabo sana, but I've already given you the Mwakenya of looking at this 83-page report, 87-page report. Ni kwenda tu kwa tables, unaangalia section gani inakufanyia, alafu unasonga mbele. Because you'll find under each section we've put a table summarizing the relevant sections, the purpose, the barrier, how it's inconsistent with our refugee law. Yeah? Maswali? Hakuna. Hiyo sasa ni njaa imegonga ya lunch. Yes. 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 This is it. yes, we are focusing on the main problem. And as I was saying, stop sleeping on your rights. The law will do what the law is supposed to do. Imeshasema wewe kama ni refugee in Kenya, your recognition IDs is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anyone denying you a right with one of those documents, is he breaking the law or not? Anavunja sheria ama havunji? Si anavunja? Mm. Interoperability. You see that kwa Kenya. So we are working towards there. We are working to definitely. Yes, I'm not. I agree 100%. No, yes, that is different. Yes. What I was saying, remember I was saying these things are progressive. First of all, we didn't have it at all. Can you imagine the time when it was only refugee ID? Refugee ID, to get a refugee ID, you had to go through RSD. RSD was taking how long? So long. To get the ID itself was taking how? But before you get your new ID, ile ingine isha expire. Ama the pass or whatever ilisha expire 1,000 years ago. So we are progressively moving, and those are the conversations we're having in this room. That putting our head together every time trying to crack, what is the problem? How can we fix it? Let us bring this person, that is the solution. Keep on pushing. Keep on making it work. I'm not the one standing between you and lunch. It's you guys now who are raising your hands. Let no one blame me. Oh, okay. So anasema, because when you come back, you will be very full and you will not want to look at screens. Hizo burning questions, tuziandike mahali, and then we start this debate again immediately after lunch, sindio? Ama there's a very burning one. Hey. It's okay. I mean,